All right, it's Thompson to Clark. Monday night here after the Giants just beat the Chicago Cubs in a very emotionally up and down baseball game. Did the post-game reaction show for Bleacher Report, so we will add that and all of our up and down emotions to the tail end of this. So we'll hit you with this intro. Uh, you know, at the tail end of the recap, we talk a little bit about that Rickwood game, which is on Thursday. And today, Willie Mays had a post from the San Francisco Giants account, which said he will not be able to attend, which is a little bit of a bummer. But he mentioned not being able to get around as well. And I sort of read that, and I was like, man, I can't even think of what it's going to be like when Willie's not here, right? Like that. It's just such a bummer. I was hoping he could go. Obviously, his health comes first and all of that, but just made me think about Mick. Man, that's going to be a sad day when he is no longer with us. But that is not the case. He says he's going to be watching from home. That game will still be very special, even with him not in attendance. And it's one of those, I'm glad the Giants are able to be a part of this kind of thing.
Yeah, this is a cool thing. The field, they call it the Field of Dreams game. Still kind of in the background, but it's the Rickwood game. The Giants put a really cool. I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet, but they put a really cool documentary on the Giants YouTube channel about this game, about the history of. Yeah, it's really cool about the history of Rickwood, the history of. Willie Mays, playing for the Birmingham Black Barons. It's only like 22 minutes, but it's really, really cool. Very, very fun to watch. Yaz is in there talking about, getting to meet Willie Mays and talking to him over the years and getting to meet, many different players over the years. And Lamont Wade Jr. is in there, which makes you sad because more news coming out today.
Playing, yeah.
Probably not going to be there, which is a total bummer. I was hoping they would.
He just won't be in the lineup, more than likely.
Yeah, and I was hoping they'd at least maybe be able to get Jordan Hicks lined up to pitch, that game too. But he pitched tonight, Monday night, so he's not going to pitch Thursday. I really hope it's not a bullpen game.
Yeah, that would be the worst.
That would be the absolute worst.
But
unfortunately, I think it's
what if you get Spencer Bivens out there?
Then that's true, and you could get Spencer Bivens too, which would be awesome because Bivens pitched on on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping ahead here already, so Thursday would line up perfectly, and even if he can give you 2 innings to be the quote unquote opener, 2-3 innings, but he gave us 4 innings on Sunday. So
yeah, it's a 4 or 3 and change or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, be looking forward to that. And also, like you mentioned, Lamont Wade probably not going to be there. There was some other injury updates of guys throwing off of the mound and this and that, but it does look like Blake Snell will be back sooner than everybody else. Probably within the next couple weeks, I'm thinking. And then Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb after the All-Star break. We knew that already about Robbie Ray, but it's just such a bummer about Alex Cobb and his inability to get healthy. So the resources are coming, but man, it just feels like it's taken forever for them to get here. And they're having to deal with games like Sunday where everybody in your bullpen but one has to pitch, including your closer, and he's so mad that he's probably so mad that he even had to pitch. But he hadn't thrown in a few days, so you needed to get him some work. And so, yeah, I just hope that, with the resources, then all of a sudden the problem is not that you don't have enough arms. The problem is that you have more than enough arms. And then, Bob Melvin and Farhan will have to decide what to do there. But so those are coming. And then I guess the last thing before we talk about the Giants game tonight, in the post-game recap, the Dodgers of all teams are having to fight through a little bit of adversity. When you can pay for every single player that you want and they all are pretty healthy, except for they've had some starting pitching issues with Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw, but for the most part, injury wise at least, they've been okay this year. And then, like, just like a 1-2 punch, Yamamoto goes down, which originally we heard was a triceps injury, but I guess is a rotator cuff. So he's on the DL. And then Mookie gets hit right on the hand, which, gosh, those are the ones that, the face obviously is bad, but when you get that
Yeah.
thumb and that hand, those look nasty.
All the tiny bones in there and everything. I mean, yeah.
And Mookie is out, and whether or not whomever is the most valuable player, whomever you think, to me it's Mookie, just
Oh, yeah.
because he's got to play shortstop at the same time. But he's out, so they have to deal with some adversity here. Of course, when they have to deal with adversity, the luck and the baseball gods are still on their side, because who did they have to play today? None other than the Colorado Rockies, who
Yeah,
they
yeah, and
who
yeah.
they were able to beat fairly easily. Rockies tried to score some runs in the ninth to make it look
Yeah.
semi okay, but they still were down like 9-1 before that ninth inning.
Yeah. And that's one of those teams too that, when the Dodgers get injuries, then they're just going to go ahead and open up the farm system and say, here, let's give you these guys. These guys are top prospects. Let's throw them in there and go out and get Luis Robert or Garrett Crochet. I mean, they're probably gonna go after and get whoever they want. But that's kind of the whole thing about this is you looked at their lineup tonight with no Mookie, and then you go, well, that's not that threatening. I mean, now without Mookie in it, you go, okay, well, you got to get through Freeman, who's scuffling right now, and he's 34 years old, and then you've got Shohei. But other than that, it's home run or strike out the rest of the lineup. But and then you've got, I mean, this is how bad it's gotten on the bottom half of their lineup. They've got Kevin Biggio in there starting,
Yeah.
and he's still hitting under 200, and I think he's only 2 for 12 with the Dodgers so far. So when they're picking guys like that off of the waiver pile, off the DFA pile, obviously they're getting a little desperate for the bottom half of their lineup, and now they're going to have to look at shortstop. But do they trade away prospects for a shortstop and then move Mookie back out to the outfield or second base? Yeah, I mean,
Like a Bo Bichette, maybe?
Yeah, that name was thrown around. I heard that one today. But again, he's also not hitting. So who do you give up? I mean, maybe you don't have to give up as much to get Bo Bichette, but then you have to hope he starts hitting. But then again, do you stick him in the Dodgers lineup and now he's got professional hitters at the top,
Yeah.
batting around him, and all of a sudden he, sees better pitches and gets back to who he was. It's not going to be a Vladimir Guerrero unless you want to stick him at third. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different things that the Dodgers can do, but will they do it? You can spend all the money in the offseason that you want, but injuries are part of the game, and they're going to come and they're going to find you. And then you're going to have that depth, which always brings me back to the Giants and Giants fans who are like, DFA Slater, DFA. I saw one today. Trade Conforto for a number 3 starter. Who's going to take Michael Conforto and give us their number 3 starter? I don't think anybody in the world is going to make that trade. But you can't get rid of these guys, because then when you do, again, Yaz has a game like he has tonight where he makes a catch and throws out the tying run at home plate. And then he hits a triple to start the scoring.
Yeah.
And has a game. And then Slater yesterday hits a home run, and Slater's hitting 400 since he's come back off the IL. So you've got to have depth, and that's what I think the Dodgers are lacking right now, especially when these injuries pop up. You go from superstar to mid, and the Giants go from good to good, or good to mid. And so they're not dropping off a ton and still finding ways to win ball games. So
when Mookie gets hit like that, though,
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's got a player to sell, it's like the old Fat Joe saying, "Yesterday's price is definitely not today's price." Right? Because you see Mookie go down and you're like, "Oh, you might need this guy a little bit more." But, if you're the Dodgers, you go, "Look, we'll figure out Rojas can play short. We'll kind of deal and I have no idea if Biggio can play any shortstop at all, but you just move middle infielders around and figure it out and hope that you can kind of uh still win enough, or that you've kind of built a big enough lead to where you don't have to get really too worried about it until Mookie is close to coming back. But at the same time, I think Dodger fans are looking at this like this is our year to actually finally get over the hill for a non-COVID title. And, the Yankees are the team that's kind of the dandy of baseball right now. So the
Yeah.
Dodgers are not right now. The Dodgers are still on pace to win like 98 games or something like that. But the
Oh yeah.
Yankees are the ones who are kind of the dandy. And maybe that's better for the Dodgers because then you don't have all of those expectations of, but I know Shohei's still on pace to hitting like 45 jacks or whatever. But maybe it is better for them just to kind of, not be the expected team. So good. Not anytime something bad happens to the Dodgers, even though we don't want anything to happen to players necessarily, like injuries. If there is a team that some bad stuff could possibly happen to, we're always happy for that to be the Dodgers because
Yeah,
we are haters. We are bitter Giants fans, and we
that's
hate
right.
the Dodgers.
With a passion. We hate them so much that I got to point out that there's 4 teams in the majors that have better records than them. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
All right, let's toss it over to our post-game reaction show that we did for Bleacher Report after the Giants beat the Cubs 7-6. The GOAT, and like we mentioned on that show, we're not talking about the greatest of all time. We're talking about the GOAT, the actual worst part of the game, the umpire, the home plate umpire, and Trenton Brooks, who I was ready to. I wanted this guy off the team at certain moments in the game. But the Giants had to come back from a lot of bad stuff and win a game, which makes you feel really good. So we'll throw it to that. We'll end the show off on a positive note with a win, and we will see you next week. Oh, Brad, just when we think that they've done it all and pushed us away, they bring us right back in. Thairo Estrada.
Oh man.
Top of the 9th inning. We'll get to the big picture stuff, and then we'll recap all the scoring and all the stuff. Giants beat the Cubs 7-6 in one of the more back and forth games you're going to see, and ones in which I feel like that the Giants usually lose. So I'm not really comfortable talking about them winning this game, at least this team. But in a game in which I think both teams would say that the biggest opponent was the home plate umpire.
Yeah.
That was one of the worst games I've seen behind the dish in quite a long time.
Oh, for sure. And it's funny because you and I mean, we don't usually talk about officiating in sports, umpiring, refereeing in football and basketball and whatnot. But when it's glaring like that, you kind of have to say, hey, what's going on here, man? What is it that this umpire is missing? And it was from the first batter too. I mean, it really was. It called third strike to Wisely, who led off the game. That was, maybe 2 inches off of his shoelaces. So that kind of set the tone for the rest of the evening, unfortunately.
The Cubs, I think, would probably have the same conversations with Major League Baseball about how poorly the umpire. I don't even want to mention his name; it was just so bad. And he's and the other thing, right, is and these umpires, I don't know if they don't get feedback from anybody, but the way that he was reacting to anybody having an issue with the strike zone, just like, come on, I'm correct on this. I'm absolutely right. Him and Patty Bales were going at it. I think Melvin got kicked out on a Chapman strike 3. So it was just both teams having frustrations about it. And then you kind of felt like, well, who's going to take advantage of it? And it was absolutely the Cubs, because the Giants kind of defensively, I think really lucky defensively, because Brett Wisely is handling balls hit right at him fairly well. We saw Luciano have problems with balls hit at him, easy plays. Wisely's making those plays, but he's not really making any other play. He actually made a really good play. I think it was in the either the eighth or the ninth. He went backhand and slipped and bounced the ball to first and threw a runner out. But he's not getting to anything where he's having to anticipate. He's having to dive. It's just the stuff that's right at him. And I thought him maybe not making a couple plays was going to turn out to be a problem tonight. It didn't, because they come back and win. But it's also Trenton Brooks, who, why does he play in this game? Well, he plays because Wilmer Flores is still kind of beat up. He, at this point, even though he's not really that old, he kind of is old man Wilmer. His knees barking a little bit. He was going to pinch hit until Estrada went deep. But when you have someone like Trenton Brooks playing, Trenton Brooks does not have a lot of ABs. He doesn't have a lot of reps out there, especially in a game at Wrigley Field like this. I don't know what his history was in the minors or even in the majors before this season, because I'd never heard of him before he came up. But he was in opportunities today to really be the hero. And he was almost the GOAT for the club. Had the Giants lost this game, Trenton Brooks is absolutely the GOAT. I think it was 2 at-bats in a row he had bags juiced. I know at least one at-bat, the bags were juiced. And the Giants look like they're about to make a little bit of a run here. And he, you don't see this very often. He gets the delay on a pitcher who had just walked the batter right in front of him, and he gets the delay, so he's automatically down 0-1, and then he just half swings at 2 pitches in the dirt, and just has an uncompetitive at bat, and then comes back again, bags juiced, uncompetitive. I guess it was a little bit more competitive, but he was having to do things that hitters that aren't fantastic have to do, like, the guy's going to throw me a lot of splitters. So as he's rocking back in his in the stretch, I have to shuffle my feet forward so that I can try and get this to the splitter before it drops. Like, no big league hitters really do that because it's gimmicky. You don't want to. You want to stay in your at bat, and you don't want.
It's uncomfortable.
Yes, and so it's stuff like that where you're just like, okay, Trenton Brooks, probably not a big leaguer. The Giants roster, the way it's been built with all the injuries, and I'm going to give Farhan a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. I don't think when he was putting this roster together thought, we're going to have the most guys on the IL in the league, and if they don't have the most, they're probably pretty close. But they're just injury after injury after injury, and so you have a Brett Wisely who's not a natural shortstop playing shortstop, and then you have Trenton Brooks getting some ABs in a game just for the mere fact that he plays first base and is left-handed. And yet they still go on to win this game thanks to some tough play by guys like Tyro, by guys like Baby Yaz, who had a tremendous game. There was an opportunity for him to drive in some runs as well. He did not have a good at-bat, but throws a runner out at home, triples home the first run. You can excuse that at bat because of all of the things that he did earlier in the game. And they fought. I just think, it's one of those, like I said in the beginning, these are kind of the games I expect them to lose. They kind of get out to an early lead and then they can't capitalize on, to extend that lead. And so then when you can't do that, you're basically playing on the margins, and you're just hoping that you can get through the rest of these innings. And unfortunately they couldn't. Eric Miller, who's had to pitch a lot lately, gave up a 3-run jack. I guess Randy Rodriguez was the only pitcher who didn't pitch yesterday, and that was in a game where they were up 13-2 going into the 9th inning. And so he gives up a home run. And so you're just thinking man, this team, this is so frustrating. Why can't they just protect leads? Why can't they just add on to leads? They're just not that team. But in the end, you get some guys on base after an entire game of guys being on base and not hitting them in, and Tyro hits a 3-run jack, and then all is great in the world. You're like, oh, I love this team again after you were so frustrated with them just 10 minutes earlier. What a crazy game this was.
But do you really forget about what happened earlier? I mean, we love to win. A win is a win, right? I mean, but do you really forget about the bases loaded at bat by Brooks? The fact that to take a 3-2 lead with the bases loaded, Tyro needed to get hit in the right arm on a almost a check swing. It's the little things like that. Like I texted you over the weekend and I said, I feel like this team, when they get the bases loaded, they don't get that single. And this was before Sunday's game, right? Before yesterday, when the Giants rolled on the Angels in the final game. They were getting bases loaded hits. I mean, that's great, but they don't get the bases loaded singles.
Yeah.
A ground ball up the middle that drives in 2 runs. It's with the bases loaded, the Giants are either going sack fly, somebody's making a mistake, they're getting hit by a pitch, or they're grounding into a double play, or if you got 2 outs, you're not scoring a run. None of that is happening. So it's hard. You look at this game and you go, yeah, awesome comeback win. But then you go, now we got to go into tomorrow and ride that. And that's what this 2024 team seems to lack, is the ride, riding the momentum. Because if you're going to be a playoff team, doesn't matter what year it is, you've got to have not some luck, but you've got to have some fire, some comeback wins. And I feel like the Giants are running out of comeback wins at this point. Like, have they spent them all? Because when you see this many comeback wins since the Pirates series until now, you kind of want to see the Giants like 10 games over 500 at this point. You think, hey, we got something out of that. But then when you look at all these comeback wins, you go, if we didn't have those comeback wins, we'd be 7 games under 500 right now, probably 7 or 8 games under 500.
There was an interesting inning. So it's the bottom of the 7th. I just looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
So the Giants had just taken the lead again on Tyro getting hit by the pitch, like you said. Mark Leiter Jr., who hits Tyro, is telling the umpire that he didn't get out of the way. And the entire time, he's like trying to get out of the way.
He was trying to do it. And the whole time, Tyro's just check swinging and just, tucks his arms in and gets hit back. At no point did he stick his arm out to try to get it. Especially,
but you know what? If I'm the pitcher,
right
I'm saying the same thing to the umpire in that moment.
Well, of course.
I just gave up the lead again. So bottom of the 7th starts. So they go 1 out, and then Wisdom gets on base.
Mm-hmm.
Pop up to the catcher. So now we have 2 outs. Eric Miller comes in. Cody Bellinger walks on 4 pitches, and 3 of them were strikes. Like 3 of them were they're right there. They're right there for.
I mean, strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. I mean, none of this was borderline. It was 3 pitches that should have been called strikes. The Giants should have been out of the inning. Now, granted, if the umpire is calling 1 or 2 of those a strike earlier in the at bat, then Bellinger's going to swing. But he's thinking, hey, this strike zone is the size of, that little target that you got to hit to dunk somebody in the dunk tank, about that size at that point of the at bat. So he's thinking, I don't have to swing at anything.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'm getting all of these calls. And it was brutal to watch, because then the Giants shouldn't have even been in a situation where all of a sudden they're down 6-3.
And what I failed to mention is so the base hit that Patrick Wisdom hit, it was a pop-up that Trenton Brooks, it's dark, so maybe he lost it in the lights, but it's windy. Maybe it was swirling too much.
It did drift behind him a little bit. I mean, I got to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. That's a tough one in Wrigley.
okay, in Wrigley, had Trenton Brooks not struck out 3 times in this game, then yeah, then you're like, okay, like he's, if he I guess he did steal a bag on a ball that the catcher dropped earlier in the game. But,
Yeah.
when you are the GOAT, and I don't mean the greatest of all time, I mean, how you and I used to think about the GOAT when we were younger. And because you're leaving guys on base, you can't make contact when all you need to do is get a productive out. I think he must have left 7 guys on base or something like that.
Yeah.
And he strikes out with the bags juiced in a moment where you're like, okay, like let's do something here. Then that play happens where it's literally an infield pop up that you have to make a play on, and he doesn't even get a glove up on it. That's how poorly he judges it. And then he kind of looks at Tyro, and Tyro's looking at him like, come on, bro. And so then the umpire gives that walk to Bellinger. And I don't blame Bellinger. If the umpire's not calling strikes, don't swing.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. That's what created that at bat and created the walk, is that he wasn't getting anything called on him.
So then Seiya Suzuki doubles, scores Wisdom. And then Ian Happ just hits a mile-high jack. And at that point, it is 6-3. This is when, I may have said something in a text such as, I very much do not like this baseball team. And so at that point, we're like, this is, like, can we end this game? Let's record this podcast. We're hot right now.
Yeah.
But then they start to get going a little bit. They start to peck away. Patrick Bailey hits a no-doubter in the bottom or in the top of the 8th. So it's now 6-4. And Chapman is called out on strikes to end the inning on a close call. It was probably a strike, but at this point, Melvin is so upset that he got thrown out of the game. And so easy bottom of the 8th. Giants get out of it. And then in the top of the 9th, they start to continue to peck away. Soler reaches on catcher's interference of all things. Mike Yastrzemski walks, and then that's when Tyro hits the jack, which makes it 7-6 because of Patrick Bailey's home run the inning before. And thankfully, the Camilo Doval experience that we saw last night or yesterday, in which he gave up hits and hits and hits and walks and couldn't really throw the ball where he wanted to, and ended up grabbing the cooler and even fumbling the cooler before he could throw it.
I'm just happy he didn't tear a rotator cuff throwing the freaking cooler on the ground or slam it on his foot or do something. I'm glad he fumbled it because it could have possibly been pretty ugly.
So if you look at the game, if you look at, like, no one looks at baseball this way, but let's cut the game into thirds.
Mm-hmm.
So the Giants and Cubs in the first 3 innings, nobody's actually scored. In the 4th, the Giants score. In the 6th, the Cubs take the lead. In the 7th, the Giants tie it. And then also in the 7th, they take the lead. So it's like if they're like splitting this game up in thirds, it's like everything happens in the last third of the game because of all of the all of the runs, all of the hits, all of the big stuff is all happening in the last 3 innings. And it's just like, I get it. Like, you have 2 starting pitchers who are throwing fairly well. It's funny because Jordan Hicks starts this game and you're just like, oh, yeah, I forgot Jordan Hicks pitched. It's because, like, by the time he's out of the game, like, it's a completely different baseball game.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So, I was just looking at it like, you think of baseball as 9 innings. You could have only just played, the 7th through the 9th, and you would have had a full baseball game because that's when all the action happened. But the teams, I think that, and we said this in the series against the Astros, these teams are kind of like, I wouldn't say that they're similar. They're built differently, but they're at about the same level of competitiveness and talent. This game drops the Cubs to 39 or 34 and 39. and the Giants are 36 and 37. But you kind of group them in with all of these teams in the National League who are so similar to each other. And it's just going to be one of those things where the Giants and the Cubs, they're going to be around unless one of the teams falls out of favor. They're going to kind of be around. And I have a feeling, as we get closer to the end of this season and the wild card thing starts to mean a lot more, we're going to be looking at the Cubs. Thankfully, the Astros are in the other division, but it would be sort of the same thing. And it just boggles my mind that when you look at the wild card at 36 and 37, the Giants are tied for the third spot of the wild card. It's amazing. Does this team look anywhere near a team that should be in contention for the wild card? Like it's ridiculous.
No, and neither do the Cubs, and neither do. I mean, the Nationals are right there too.
Well, I was going to ask you if you knew what team was tied with the Giants of all teams, the Nationals.
I looked today and I was like, this is weird, man. But that's the thing too, is who's going to be buyers? You have a game like this tonight and you go, well, the Giants could use a lot and the Cubs could use a lot. And there's going to be a lot of players out there for the taking. There's a couple of outfielders. There's going to be like Connor Joe. I mean, but then the Pirates, are they that far out? Are they going to be selling Connor Joe?
The Pirates are a half a game behind the Giants, along with the Padres and the Diamondbacks and the Mets, who, I mean, if you talk to any Mets fans, like it's like doom and gloom, and they're one game behind.
Yeah, exactly. But the expectations for the Mets were astronomical compared to, even though we went into the season, our team went into the season. So, well, we just got Blake Snell and, we got Jorge Soler and we made all these moves. And then we got Luciano's going to come up and help out. And the young kids are going to come up and help out. And then Robbie Ray is going to be back after the All-Star break, and Alex Cobb is going to be there at the end of May, which never happened. So going into the season, we thought, okay, these are the games tonight. These are the games that this team has to win. They've got to win those one-run ball games. They've got to be great in one-run ball games going forward. So where does that, where do you look for help to get better and maintain that? You look in the bullpen, I would say first, and next week we're going to talk about that. We're going to have an early trade deadline show. We're going to throw out some names and just kind of pour over some guys and say, hey, look, these guys could help the Giants. And don't get me wrong, they're going to be able to help any team, because when you have a crowded field like this, so winning those one-run games and winning those games against the teams that are right there in the standings with you, that's key. And then winning those series. So when you lose a series to the Angels at home, then you start to wonder, who is this team? And do they come back? Do they travel to the Midwest, to Chicago on a hot, muggy night on a Monday night? And are they able to pull out a game like this? And then they do, and then they get our hopes up again.
Yeah,
we go, here we go. But yeah.
Just be thankful that they're not in the American League, because with their record, they'd be like 6 games out of the wild card race.
The American League
is really nasty this year.
Yeah.
So a couple of other things about tonight's game. I guess we should talk a little bit about Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks did not have his best stuff.
No, he flashed it, but
he has not had his best stuff of late. And this is part of the growth period for him as a starting pitcher. He's already reaching limits as far as what he's done historically. 5 innings, 4 hits, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. Lots of, he is somebody who should have been able to take advantage of this wide strike zone, but a lot of his pitches were not even anywhere close, and he was struggling with being able to do that. Randy Rodriguez came in. Not great for Randy Rodriguez, who we are fans of. I still think as he continues to have these moments of, just the ability to pitch in these tight situations or in these situations where you kind of need him. But he does have to be better. It's 1 2/3, 4 hits, 3 runs earned. Gave up the jack to tie the game, or no, to take the. They took the lead on that home run. Eric Miller, same thing. Some of it was, we mentioned the umpire, we mentioned Trenton Brooks, but still, he gave up a monstrous home run to a right-handed hitter in Happ that like almost put this game out of reach. These innings, and I'm not sure, and was actually interested in your thoughts. Bob Melvin's management of the bullpen so far, I think he's really trying to find his guys, and he thinks he's got a guy, and then they prove him wrong, like almost immediately.
Yeah.
This could have been a Rodgers game. I'm assuming he was saving those guys for a little bit later if he needed them. But if you have a Tyler Rogers instead of Randy Rodriguez and a Taylor Rogers instead of Eric Miller, maybe it's a little bit different. But I also don't know how those guys were feeling after pitching yesterday. But
Right.
but yeah, like the bullpen itself, it seems like he's kind of got it down, and they finish games, and there are like other moments where you're like, man, the guys that he has in there, they should not be in there.
No, and you're right, and I think he is still trying to feel it out. But again, he's trying to feel it out with a bunch of rookies too, and that's the hard part. When you've got Randy Rodriguez, you've got, I mean, Ryan Walker's not a rookie. He was a rookie last year. Still a young guy. You still don't know exactly what you've got.
I secretly wanted him warming up while Duvall was pitching.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I love Ryan Walker, and he did fantastic yesterday. He came and got the last 2 outs by strikeout, and that's what you need. So yeah, there's, and again, if you can go get 1 or 2 bullpen pieces at the trade deadline and not have to wonder, I mean, do you pop and try to get a Mason Miller? Because if you can get Mason Miller to close out games along with Camilo Doval, so if Doval has pitched, quite a few innings, and then you've got a Mason Miller and vice versa, do you make a move like that? Do you wager the future for a move like that? And I think you do if you're going for it. And again, if you're trying to win 1-run ball games like tonight, and you're not 100% sure of your bullpen, because like you said, I mean, how many times we heap the praise of Eric Miller and then he has a stinker, and then we heap the praise of Randy Rodriguez and then he has a stinker. Tyler Rogers is pretty solid.
Or we heap the praise of Luke Jackson. No, we haven't heaped his praise.
We haven't done that yet. No, we haven't gotten that far yet. We'd like to. I mean, I love Luke Jackson. I want him to pitch well.
Yeah.
I like his weird pitch that he's got. I mean, it'd be fantastic if he could pitch well. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he is feeling it out. And it just kind of, it looks like it, because there is no consistency. I mean, there's no, this is our 7th, this is our 8th. And we know our 9th, but like 6th, 7th, 8th, we don't really know who's going to be in there. And when somebody comes in, we don't know, is this going to be the good so-and-so or the bad so-and-so? We don't know that. And there's just no consistency. So if they can go out and get like a David Bednar from Pittsburgh. But again, Pittsburgh's in it. So I keep talking about these teams that traditionally are not in it. But again, Pittsburgh doesn't want to pay their players, so they are more likely to give up a player, even though they're a game out of the playoff hunt. They're likely to give up players because they want the young guys to bring them in. Because I guarantee you, as soon as it's time to pay O'Neal Cruz, he won't be there anymore.
Yeah.
Because they're going to lowball him. I think, I don't think there's many players that have taken an extension. Brian Reynolds, I think, might have been the only one who took an extension recently to stay there. And it was kind of below market value. But again, and we talk about this all the time. These are humans, and they have families, and they have roots that they lay down when they go to cities, and maybe he enjoys it there, and his kids are in a great school, and his kids are thriving. And that's really, I mean, honestly, that comes down to it. Family's most important. So,
I guess the only teams in the National League who you could say are probably mailing it in already are the Rockies and the Marlins.
Yeah,
Everybody else in the National League is within 2 games of the third wild card.
but the Rockies don't make moves.
No.
That's the whole thing is you always look at their team every year and they're out of it and you go, ooh, we can pick this guy off the pile, or how about that guy? They don't move anybody. And so that's one team you can just kind of take out of it. But the Marlins, I wouldn't be surprised. You see Jazz out there, and you're going to see some other players out there.
You mean the most overrated player in baseball? That's off of that
so
survey
terrible.
that we saw.
Poor Jazz.
They put the guy. I think it's just they're just jealous from him being on the cover of the show last year.
That's what it was. Yeah, anybody who's on the cover of the show is quote unquote overrated. So
the Angels, Athletics, and Chicago White Sox are probably talking themselves into selling soon.
Yeah,
but you know,
JD Davis was just DFA'd today from the Oakland Athletics. When you get DFA'd from the Oakland Athletics,
poor JD.
But that's, I mean, if he clears, then he becomes a free agent. So, maybe they're just doing him a favor to say, look, we couldn't trade you,
right?
Because we're not, we're just not in that mode right now. So we'll just kind of let you find a new team. But
I guess if you're the Rangers, Astros, you're probably talking yourself into, getting on a run here. You got a veteran team, you got a winning pedigree. Sort of, I would probably say similarly to the Rays, the Tigers, the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are doing a lot better than I thought, just based on how some of my Blue Jays fan friends are talking about that team. They're
you have
so
Blue Jay fan friends? I don't.
Oh yeah. I know
many people.
I know a few guys who live in Canada who follow baseball pretty closely.
Oh, that's right. You got the wrestling network, so you got a lot of people that kind of all over the place.
Yeah,
I was going to say I don't know anybody here who is a Blue Jays fan.
Well, you got to hone up on them because that's the game that we're going to see.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, and then the Red Sox are 2.5 games out. Yeah, so in the American League, I think a bunch of teams can probably talk themselves into the idea that they can try and compete, but some of them are going to have to make some decisions to be sellers or buyers soon. Maybe the Rays, because the Rays are one loss record. The Rays are not terrible, 34-38, but they have a -71 run differential.
Yeah,
which is kind of crazy. But the Giants are still -22. The Cardinals, who are in second in the wild card race, are -37. This is weird. This whole wild card thing just throws us off here. I want to talk you into the possibility of bringing up one particular player, and that young man goes by the name of Reggie Crawford.
There we go.
Reggie Crawford. Now, people who follow the Giants closely, they know that he is a fairly recent draft pick. He's only been in the big leagues for 2 years. In 2023, he threw a handful of games for San Jose, threw a handful of games for Eugene, got moved up this year to Richmond. He threw 7 in 2/3 innings for Richmond. Didn't have the best ERA for those 9 2/3, but he did have 19 strikeouts in 9 2/3 innings. And so it was a little bit of a surprise to me when they sent him to Sacramento, which is the AAA club.
Mm-hmm.
And in those 8 2/3 innings, he has given up all of 3 hits, all of 1 run. And he has walked 7 guys, which is probably the issue with him at this point if you're thinking about bringing him up early. But he does have 11 strikeouts. I wonder if he is a guy that they are going to look to add to that bullpen someplace soon. Because if he is, I would kind of hope that they would do it sooner than later, because you want to test him in some of these high leverage innings before you get closer to the playoff season, because you want to see him handle this stuff before it's those super urgent innings as you get closer. So I want to see him come up and see what he looks like. To me, if he's in Sacramento, they probably have plans for him sooner than later, right?
Yeah, I think what they were trying to do last time I read about him, they're trying to get him to pitch in back-to-back days consistently. And I think because I think right now it's like every fourth day, and then they're kind of trying to come down to every third day, and then get him to every other day, and then give him like a couple of back-to-back days,
Yeah,
and
he is
rest
not far
between.
off from Tommy John from when they
No,
drafted him.
exactly. And again, yeah, I'd like to see him also, but then we just talked about that. I don't know if we want to see, if you're fighting for that playoff spot, do you want to see another young guy in high leverage situations, or would you rather at this point explore the possibility of some waiver wire pickups, some trades? Because this is when Farhan starts to really kind of, this is Farhan's game.
Farhan
You're
season.
Farhan season. You're going to start to see some guys getting through waivers or being, DFA'd, and then all of a sudden, the guy maybe had pitched 10 years in the majors, but is on the backside, but he's got experience. So Farhan will want that, So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts right now. Yeah, I'd love to see Reggie Crawford, but I don't know if I want to see him in September when they're fighting for a playoff spot and they're game out of the wild card, and then he comes in the eighth inning with the bases loaded. I want to see a veteran in that situation, and so I think moves still need to be made. But
You know who I want to see a little bit more of? Spencer Bivens.
yeah, and maybe in a role in the bullpen at point. But I mean, they're going to need that arm because you got Robbie Ray and you got Alex Cobb coming back, and Jordan Hicks. I was just looking at the numbers. I think he's like a third of an inning away from his career high of 77 and 2/3 innings, and we're in June. So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, so how far can he go? But again, he's at the lowest he's ever been in his career of strikeouts per nine. So
Yeah.
that's how he's just not
Yeah,
throwing.
he's
hard.
he's at 93 essentially.
Yeah.
Pretty much all day today he lived at 93.
Which is great.
I was trying to figure out if, as we got later in the game, if he was going to let one go. I think he got one. I saw one at 94. I don't know if he went any higher than that, but it did.
I saw one at 96. I think.
Okay, so he did unleash one.
Yeah, he did, and it was in the fourth inning. But he was starting to leave pitches up. Was the problem when he got to the fourth inning? He started to leave the sinker up in the zone, and he was throwing it harder. So I think he was reaching back and just leaving pitches up. And he has a tendency to do that. The harder he throws, obviously, the less control he gets. So if he can live around 91 to 93, the movement on that thing, he can dot corners. But yeah, what's the game plan now that he's at his career high, basically, of innings pitch? That's what I want to see going forward.
Kyle Harrison is not going to add innings anytime soon because he did go on the IL, so that saves him a few, I guess probably 3-ish starts that he'll miss. So that'll save something on his arm. But at the same time, I want to see him get more reps at this level. I want to see him continue to compete at this level. So that was a little bit inopportune for them. But then again, we got to see someone like Spencer Bivens, who's a great story, by the way. There's a great athletic piece talking about his rise from independent ball and going and pitching in France and all these things. But what a funky righty, dude. I hated hitting against guys who just threw from like he's got like coat hangers for shoulders and like just like super wiry.
Yeah,
like, oh my
knees
God.
and elbows coming at you.
So but yeah, that was kind of fun to see. So I guess the last 2 cents on this game, Giants beat the Cubs here 7-6 at Wrigley, and they come back. They got 2 more in Wrigley, and then they play the Cardinals in the special game on a Thursday evening, which will be a blast.
Yeah,
4 p.m. Pacific start. But yeah, they got 2 more against the Cubs. We have Logan Webb against Steele, Justin Steele, who's one of their better pitchers, even though he's only has 9 starts so far this year, 0-3, but really good ERA. And then, Logan Webb, you expect to get that W, right? Like that's the guy who we circle and we go, okay, we're in this game, we're competing, we're winning this game. And then on Wednesday, the Giants are TD and the Cubs are Kyle Hendricks, who's just having an awful year so far. So that'll
Right.
be a good one to keep giving him a more awfulness in his starts.
Yeah,
And
this
then
is another one of those series to take. It's there for the taking. You go into Chicago, you got Jordan Hicks, and you got Logan Webb, uh, and you got some rough starting pitching coming up for the Cubs. So, yeah, I mean it's one of those series you just got to win. So tonight was enormous to get that. And I don't know. I mean, how many times have we said this is now the
in
jumping off
June.
point? Yeah, this is now the jumping off point going forward. This team is so Jekyll and Hyde that it's hard to tell. I mean, even if they reel off 5 wins in a row, you kind of feel like another 5-game losing streak is right on the other side of the hill. So,
Yeah, that's what this team. I keep telling everyone they are the definition of average until they prove me wrong, and they actually
right.
go on a run and they get 5 games over 500. Then I'll change the story there. But of course, the Rickwood game on Thursday, that's going to be a blast. I hope everyone has the opportunity to check that game out. I don't know, maybe I may throw that game up on in 4K there with
Yeah.
Does Fox have the capability to put that one in 4K?
They do, yeah. Although the Euro, the Euro tournament, the UEFA Euro tournament that has been playing for the last, I guess it started on Friday of last week. That one's on Fox, and none of those games are in 4K yet
Oh,
that I've
weird.
seen. So it's
Weird.
kind of strange, yeah.
All right. That'll be it from here for Brad. I am Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.